Hello, folks. Welcome to the Entheogenic Explorers Podcast. I'm your host, Kirby, and I've got a fun guest in the studio with me today. I'm going to pronounce the last name. We were working on it before we got on air, so I would get it right, and I still may get it wrong. Josh Lajaunie.
Yes, it works.
Pretty close, pretty close. If you see this on your channel right now, you're probably seeing his spelling in the bottom of the Zoom too. So I should have had you guys guess what you think the pronunciation of the last name was before I did it, but hey, we got it. So that's a good start. How are you, sir?
I'm great. How about you?
I'm doing good, man. I've been looking forward to this for a long time.
Yeah, me too.
This is a conversation I'm excited to have, excited to share with folks because it's the realness. I think a lot of times just because we're in the matrix that we're in, it's we try to have big names and splashy titles and the wow effect. But what I found is for my personal healing and the stories that I was most attracted to were just a regular person. Um, just a regular person that's just trying to make it through, try to be a better version of themselves. How did they come to this? How has it impacted them, and what's their story? So I'm excited to have you.
Yeah, there's a like I'm thank you, and I feel the same way. Like I've learned a lot over my years about specific details of maybe nutrition or running or just different things. But the things that have kept me going have been individual stories and people that I've met along the way. Um, and and so there's a certain value. It's tricky because anecdotes aren't really scientifically valid, and at the same time people's individual stories matter. And that's part of the my journey that I'm on right now, is that growth.
I love it. I love it, and that's a great explanation for it. So let's do this. Let's get into it. Let's again a way I like to go about it that we kind of tackled it. We'll put it into three pieces. What I like folks to do is just tell a little bit about themselves in the sense of where were they a couple years ago, a few years ago, where are you now, and what are your hopes for the future? Well, we can start with the first piece. What's a little background about you? Who are you, Josh? What's your history?
Wow, that's such a wild question. I'm just a Cajun kid from South Louisiana, born and raised in the swamps. Uh, and that's I was raised in South Louisiana by basically Mississippi grandparents. So it was like even though I'm from here and I have the last name and the bloodline, I still had Mississippi practices in my house, food wise and jargon wise. And so while I'm from here and I'm deeply rooted as a South Louisianan, in a way, I was raised here almost as an outsider. And that made us probably latch on to the culture in a way that was like a very performative way to sort of claim my stake in Cajundom. For my grandfather loved it down here, even though it was from Mississippi. So we learned all of the rules and stews and stuff, and I hunted and fished and did all of that, and wound up being just like my grandfather, a big giant man, over 400 pounds. I had gotten a little heavier than he had gotten. And so I went on a journey of trying to lose weight finally. I have been yo-yoing in my entire life, and the something that's really changed my life was all of the lessons I learned and the effort that went into losing 200 plus pounds, right? That happened. And I want to abbreviate that part of my life because it's almost taken over my life. Because it's so profound, the before and afters. It really, and you get all of the kudos for it, and it really takes over a life and pulls you away from, your true worth as a human. And so basically that's why, if you might Google my name, you might see different things on the internet because that was is almost feels like a past life now of uh being the guy with the shocking before and after. And not only did he lose weight, but now he runs ultra marathons. Don't you want to know how he did it? Don't you want to ask him questions? and and so I was that guy for a good long time, and it felt really good. It served that former fat kid in a huge way. It's like, oh, I'm one of the cool kids now. And so I lived that way for a while, and physical breakdowns happen and old injuries come back and just massive things happen in your life. And you're like, oh, you know what? Maybe my whole entire problem wasn't the 230 pounds of adipose tissue. Maybe it's something a little deeper, that losing that weight and going on all of those long runs was helping me run from. And that's where essentially, like, that's what essentially brought me to the medicine, is like a fall from grace almost from that existence in my life. Is like a fat person becoming a fit person who people are just like, oh my God, this story. And then the pressure of being that after photo all the time brought me to a place where I was realizing, like, I really not accepting myself at all, as I started to slip back and gain weight and get less athletic and fall apart a little bit. Also, the mentality, I started falling apart a little bit. And so falling from that really hurt a lot and made me devalue myself. And that's that low point, sadly enough, is what really got me to you and to the medicine, is because it was just kind of like a stab in the dark. My wonderful wife had been fascinated with plant medicine, and she had been researching ceremonies and stuff for a while. We've been through a lot here with COVID and the hurricane in the past couple years, and it's just been very stressful on both of us. And so she was already looking up these sort of modalities to try to help ease angst and worry and depression and rumination about negativity or negative things. And boom, you know in a very low point in my life, here comes something that I didn't really even understand or knew existed, or had heard about and dismissed it as, oh, I've been through situations in my youth, as y'all, that's fine, y'all are just discovering these chemicals now, and not really understanding, like, the integration and all of the other things that really go into what it is that has helped so much.
Right.
um
Well, I
so
think your
yeah.
story's, yeah, I was gonna say, I think your story is so important, uh, the part, all of it, but up to now, the pieces that you hit on, I think it's so relatable, and I love the way that you shared it. First off, you like, let me shorten it down because that's not the piece I am anymore. But I think that's so relatable, my friend. And how many people, right, have created this identity for themselves that they are buckling under, right? So I almost imagine, I don't remember what the Greek god is, the guy holding the world on his back, right? Atlas or whatever it may be.
Atlas, yes.
I feel like the majority of people I'm meeting or seeing are this, right? They've created this thing that society, the matrix, whatever you want to refer to it as, said this is what we do. This is what you
Correct.
are.
Yeah.
And if not, then you're not. I think, and we can have different discussions on different pressures for men or women, but as providers, there's a lot. So to see somebody go from, again, over 400 pounds, I understand you played college football, so you found a space where that weight was probably not only accepted but like wanted, right? A value to it, and then you decided at some stage, I need to be healthy. You went down the route, and again, I think it would be valuable for people to Google search you and understand your story, and again, the limelight that you had an opportunity to be in and that you danced in, because again, I think people could relate to that. And then I think, as you were sharing, injury just kind of caught up to you. So again, I think it's relatable because folks go through these things. I've gone through them. Everything is where now the identity that you've built up almost your entire life, or you had this negative circumstance in your life, you found something positive, basically just a new identity, though, right? That's it. So we go from one
Right.
character to a new character, and that's what you discover. So the depth isn't there in that new character, it's just a new character.
That's
And then
right.
when that becomes shaky, you go back to again, who am I? Who am I? What am I at my core? So I think that was beautiful, and I think it's super relatable because I think people are there right now. I'm imagining people that I know with the weight of the world on their back, trying to maintain this identity for who? Mostly for other people, right? Mostly
Exactly.
for other
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
Who really don't care if, who really at the end of the day, they're not really invested in, you know, positive outcomes for you per se, that, and yeah, it gets tricky, and trying and realizing like, wow, this might be technically because my shtick was, this is the most authentic version of myself, fit and running and scurrying across the earth. And it's true, like physically that is, but de facto, this human body was raised in a different scenario. This human body was reared in a different, like on different planes than the evolutionary um capacity, that's able to be achieved in like an animalistic type human that I'm imagining. And just because I've shed the weight doesn't mean like, I'm one of those guys now. It's all performative. And so maybe I was right on the physical part of it. Like there is something to being physically fit and being able to manipulate
Sure.
your environment and move through it. And there's also a deeper health of being able to truly accept yourself and know who you are and not hop from identity to identity. And when I, like, that was a pattern that I noticed that really crushed me, that really sent me down into a dark place, is like, when I don't even know who I am. And that, as a 40-something-year-old person, that feels like a free fall, you know? And and there's something amazing about being like in a free fall that brings, I feel like the fall has brought me back to history. We've talked about this privately before, about I'm so drawn to ancestry, ancient ancestry, the woods, dirt, and that feels authentic, putting a bib on my chest and running 100 miles is more performative than authentic, I think.
Mm.
And I was preaching a much different message back then, and to turn 180 degrees on something it kind of makes you feel a certain way. It makes you feel embarrassed, makes you feel like a hypocrite, makes you feel. And so wrestling with all of those feelings are important for me for my own health, but it's also kind of important for me to talk about it,
Yeah.
because I know other people going through things similarly that are very private,
Yeah.
and it's hard to talk about when the things aren't great, and
Yeah.
and but healing is necessary, and then, going through like the tricky parts of life and figuring out, and those transitions from, oh, I might have been wrong about some of that, into a new thing. um it takes a lot of things, and but it also takes some courage. And so I have to, as I try to figure out who I am, I use these things as evidence to, you know to feel good about myself, right?
Yeah. And to feel good about yourself, and again, to the piece is people are listening. Another good, maybe not a good example, another example is I had a really good friend of mine. We were just sharing some things that we thought were positive, right? It's funny, if I do a men's group, the quickest way to get everybody to stop talking is say, I want you to say something extremely positive about yourself. clams up, right? If I said, tell me something you're working on, you're struggling with, I could, it's like, take your turn, guys, slow down. But I'm like, compliment yourself. Say something that you really admire about yourself, that you love about yourself. And I remember one of the gentlemen was like, it's my intellect. I love that I'm smart. And I'm like, that's beautiful. But what happens when you're not smart? Like, if you think the reason that we love you is because you're smart,
Right.
I think you may be missing this, right? Because what happens when you're not smart? What happens when you can't run the ultramarathon anymore? What happens when you can't, lose the weight the way that you lost it? Are you not good enough anymore? Or are you not who you are or who you built yourself up to be to people? So you get that feedback. And I think I went through it as a professional athlete, right? The college athletes go through it all the time. The saddest days for me is watching March Madness and watching all those seniors. And I'm like, now who are you, brother? Right?
Oh
Who are
yeah,
you now? Right?
Facebook kills me all the time seeing me run a PR. Remember when you ran this fast of a 5K and this fast of a marathon? It's crazy.
So,
Such mixed emotion about that.
so who are you now? Right? I love that. So it seems like you dismantled this old identity. You had a chance to face it. You saw it.
Yeah.
You saw the limits of it. Said that's not for me anymore. Um, who's the new Josh?
Yeah, and I feel like that's honestly, I feel like that's coalescing. I'm still in a state of flux, to be frank. But I do know that the new Josh or is way more compassionate about people's subjective, individualized, narrativized stories that mean their entire life to them, and to dismiss it so quickly um is isn't you know isn't the way to go. And it's one of the biggest, besides the falling off and of the running and gaining weight and stuff like that, is the memory of having barked back at people who had brought me excuses about why they're struggling, you know and so I have echoes of those people in my mind. And so the new Josh is like trying to make amends just with how I live. So there's a lot more compassion in how I deal with other people right now. I'm proud of that. It's not something we were taught as football players, as Southern men, as grandson of a contractor. you know, uh, Kindness and compassion, and that's not something you really taught. And so the Josh today tries to do that part on purpose, because I know it's not a reflexive default for my programming. And so I don't always get it right, but I'm really trying to pull the levers in that direction. And today's Josh is like, not only have I um uh you know I feel like all of those feelings are really, they're good feelings to have, but they're authentically human. And so that's just another example of me trying to go back to nature, go back to. And so I've just really been enjoying getting in the woods and camping, and I don't run ultra marathons anymore, but I love to be in the woods for 24 hours, 48 hours at a time. So going camping and setting up and cooking and visiting with my brother and having my dog, and just listening to the owls and the nighttime in the woods is beautiful to me. There's a wholeness to it. There's a peace. And that's the me today. Is like, I'm trying to figure out how to put all the Tetris pieces in the place. I want more and more and more of that. I want to be outside. I want to look at stars. I want to, smell the earth and hear the rain and all of that stuff. And I feel like I'm appreciating it. And plant medicine, since then, it's like a dividing line in my life But I was at work today, and I was just looking at the dirt in the ditch at the trailer park. And I'm just looking, and I just had this, like, I'm realizing we carved the dirt out to let water drain to, and I couldn't even articulate it. Just kind of like when you're into medicine and you feel a thing and you can't really talk about it. But I felt that same way about that dirt I was looking at. And I can't even verbalize it good, but I think you can feel me. Like I feel like the connection to that little scoop of dirt. Like, and those types of things are just so much different now. Like that's where I want to be. I do want to be more physically healthy. I do, but my life right now has sort of depended on me worrying about other things at the moment. And I'm glad I am. Like, and I have so much support. I'm so glad I met you. I have so much support in my life helping me through, because this is a really rough go. But we making it. Every day is another step forward, another step forward. And I feel like I'm healing. I don't feel like I'm injuring anymore. I don't feel like I'm in that downward slide anymore. I feel like we've arrested the slide and appreciate where we at and approach with love. And that's kind of how I feel right now.
I love that. And I like, for people that are listening in, and actually we could actually segue into this, is just the process, right? I think, for me, so I'll just share my story. When I went to the medicine, when I went to do it, I was so desperate for healing. Just desperate. I would have drank anything they put in front of me if they said this would help you. And I felt really disappointed my first and second time. Although I had an experience, I was expecting to take this and then immediately be like, oh, well, awesome. I'm good now, right? I'm good. My life is exactly the way I want it. So I think for some folks, the disappointment is finding out it's a process and that it is a path. And we always hear the analogy of the path. And I think I meet a lot of folks that are on a path, but maybe not the path, but a path, which is good. But most folks I think that are struggling, like, are looking up this mountain and all they see is just trees and rocks. And it's like somewhere up there is a top, man. And they're just trying to claw. They're doing little things, they're trying. But I think you have an experience, or you can have an experience with or without the plant medicines, is irrelevant, but you have an experience where you feel that there's actually a path that you're on, right? So you still have to walk up that mountain, but it's different when you feel that you're walking in a way that's going to be productive,
Yeah.
impactful, versus a lot of folks I feel that they're struggling, they're trying, but they don't really know if it's going to work for them. So I guess I just want to emphasize the importance that it is a path and it is a journey and it is time. And maybe you can share your journey from the moment of doing the medicine. Well, I'll share something. If we need to cut it out, we can. But I'll say something about your journey and the difference that I saw immediately because you said compassion. I remember pre-ceremony having conversations about specific people in your life that there was a lot more frustration towards, a lot more just
Yeah.
resentment and anger, whatever the words are. And then literally post ceremony, a few hours later, having a conversation about this same person, but in a way of like, wow, I could only imagine what they went through. How were they feeling? And so this massive switch from how this person had impacted you and made you feel to having this massive amount of compassion for what they have potentially gone through.
Right. It's such a delicate scenario, because I'm talking about a parent in this scenario. And it's such a delicate thing to be able to appreciate the trauma that person caused and understand and have compassion for them, because that trauma was just behavior born of their own trauma that hasn't yet healed. And so part of, like, going backwards is not just going backwards to nature, but going backwards in my family line and looking back at how much trauma has just slid down from generation to generation to generation. Most of it hinged on just pure poverty. And And there's a certain compassion that came the day after ceremony about, about my dad, that just, it broke all of the scar tissue and just made me see him as like a little boy that nobody ever picked up and held and hugged and made sure it was okay. And whatever we went through was absolutely as traumatizing as it was to us. The fact that his was worse doesn't mitigate. And I can still love him. And my daily relationship with him has changed since then. Because it's just like an ease of, not ever wondering, like, does he really understand what that episode did to me? Does he really I love you. And that's important. That's the most important thing right now. And so let's just behave on that. And so, and it helped so much with that situation. It helped me so much. But it's not magic. Just like you say, like, you have to participate in it. You have to want it. You have to set your intentions. And if you want it, your brain will be allowed to think about it in ways you never imagined before. And it helps so much. It's so much like putting Tetris pieces in a right place. And that was an amazing, if it was just that scenario alone that helped me heal, the journey would have been worth it. And that's just one of the many facets of like, the positive things that have sort of unfolded since thinking about all of my life and its events, and just a little bit, change the angle of the dangle just a little bit, and new ideas come up.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. I tell folks, they're like, what happens? I'm like, it's just a tiny
Yeah.
shift. It's all it takes. It'd be like your glasses out, just change the prescription, just a hair. Things are gonna be clearer or more fuzzy. It's the same piece. Yeah. I'd like you to touch on, there was a piece that you mentioned that again, I think would be beneficial, not just to folks that have not done medicine, but also to people maybe that have done it a few times, right? Is this piece, and again, not to share your personal history, but you've done medicine, but then you've been integrating for a pretty good time now, right? A pretty good amount of time. What are you doing to kind of integrate this process, right? So again, my error was I did it, I went back and did it, and not that's an error, I shouldn't say that was an error. That was the path that I went. And I didn't really understand integration. I didn't really understand really what to do with it. I didn't have any guidance at all. So having somebody like you to share anything, I call it microdosing it. Like, what are you doing in between, right? Meditation, breath work, walking, camping. I know one of them. What can you share with folks? So again, even the veterans that have done plant medicine, maybe you can hear something from Josh that say, yeah, maybe I could extend mine, integrate it deeper, get more from it. What would be your advice?
Something that I've been open to since the shift of thought has been talk therapy. I've done talk therapy before, and it fell short of, really getting me anywhere. But I feel like, again, I wasn't participating in the way that I'm participating now. My intentions are set with this, and to have a person who is, like we talk about a lot, trauma informed, who understands. And it's almost a misnomer to call her a therapist. She's almost like a professional deep carer is all she
Mhm.
does. She sits there and she listens to you and all of your subjective, irrational vomit. And then she hardly it's just be a vessel for it. And that helps so much. That helps so much. I also feel like um I'm more willing to engage in difficult conversations that I think will help the future. Like, so with my immediate family, my mom, my brother, we all operate together, and and my happiness is so important that since then, part of the integration, if you will, for me is to make sure that I speak up and not ruminate. And so that those practices, and then having an entire family who's on board and supportive with major shifts in how we operate. I'm lucky, dude. A lot of people just have to go boom right back into a job that they hate for 12 hours a day. And so to be able to have these protocols where I love listening to like going to bed listening to the different sounds. They have these YouTube channels that are 8-9 hours long, and it helps soothe the mind. It also reminds me of where my mind was while in the medicine. It's just a certain beautiful nothingness to it that helps. And having a partner who's is intuitive and you know brilliant as mine, that helps integration a lot. It's like we live in an integrative, like an integration couple almost, and it helps a lot.
I think it's important. It's tricky when I work with people that have partners, couples, wives, whatever it may be. Um, it's never you both need to do it, but when they both have done it, it creates some ease because there's an understanding, right? And so there's like a co-integration happening, which
Oh,
is
there's that. Just yes, because my wife went first, and so there's definitely a bonding after for since. Yeah, because I was sort of dismissive of it when I heard about it at first. And
yeah.
yeah.
Could you share it? And again, just yeah, there's a couple things I want you to share, but you don't have to share. But I'd be curious. You touched on a piece. How would you say it's impacted the rest of your family, or has it? How is your adjustment? What's that look like to the rest of the family out there?
I think that everyone has, you know, tried to make a point to make it clear how much I mean to them. You know, not everybody's family does that though, but mine has been amazing. Mine is interested. Mine wants links and hear about what I'm talking about. They don't. It's not pretend. It's not performative listening. You know, uh, and we adjust, and they. It's almost like the compassion. The compassion is contagious. Not that my family isn't compassionate, but they want, like, it's almost like they want to echo what has become obvious is very important to me. And and that just, it feels very inclusive and embracing to me. I couldn't be more thankful about my family, and they know, right, um they've just been very supportive, and very much part of the integration, slowly helping me reintegrate back into work life and dealing with life, being a, property manager. It's fun.
It's interesting because, I mean, first to give you high levels of respect for the way that you're integrating it, because it can go a couple different ways. A lot of folks have what I call the like maybe I won't say that, but like almost like a born again Christian mentality. And that was me as a born again Christian. I couldn't wait to go out and share the message, right? Almost to
Yeah,
nausea.
profitable, right? Yeah,
Um,
witness.
yeah, like I'm changed, so now you, and there's a lot of spiritual bypassing that happens, and
Yeah,
that's not
well,
spiritual.
and
Yeah,
I grew up witnessing. I don't know what kind of church you grew up in, but we grew up doing like getting a church van and go witness. That's what I mean, yeah, yeah,
that's it. So when you have this type of experience that you have, if you go out and witness, sometimes at a turn, it doesn't go as smoothly. So I would assume just from what you're sharing that the way that you integrated it is the right way. And to me, I always call it like being the lighthouse, so to speak. It's like just be it. You're just whatever it is.
right.
You're just living it. And it's like my message is the way that I live, and I think that really gives people a space where they're not feeling judged. Because if you're telling them how amazing you are, there's some judgment that they feel like this level of judgment, and they don't feel as safe. But if you just are living it and being this example, not even to be the example. And that's the whole interesting part of this journey is you're not
Yeah,
trying to really do anything but just heal and be the best version of yourself, and it has all these side impacts. And I've noticed them in my friends and family around me without trying to tell anybody to do anything, just being creates a space, like Ram Dass would say, just a space for people to come up for air if they want it. Right? Here's
right.
here's the space. So I think that's beautiful and impactful because that's the goal of this. One plus one has to equal three or four or five with this work because it's not just healing you. And we've always had these conversations. It's past generations as best we can, but also future generations. I know I'm just healing myself. I'm healing my daughter and my son and these other folks.
Right.
So yeah, I appreciate you sharing that because that's
And that's another thing. Like I'm going to mention them briefly, but I can see how what we have gone through, and me as an individual, as a family, have gone through, um, how it has dismantled so many of the cycles that will not be engaged for my nephews behind us, and that's powerful, that means something to me. It feels important, you know, it feels important. Yeah, it's kind of, it feels like it feels like bigger work than just working on yourself, even though that's what you're really doing here. And so that's kind of cool. Yeah.
yeah, you nailed it. It's like this catchy thing. Where yeah, you're working on yourself, but you know that the side effect could be X, Y, and Z as well. So it's okay to acknowledge that these could be like some of the
Sure.
side benefits is like I'm gonna have a better marriage and I'm gonna do this and 100%. That's not the drive. That's not the incentive necessarily. It is just a beautiful side effect of it that you kind of have to acknowledge. And again, just for folks that, again, I won't share your story too much. One of the reasons that you're such a great story here is that if, and you've danced it nicely. Because when I met you, you were in a pretty heavy place. I mean, you were in a pretty
Yeah.
heavy place so to see you now and to hear you now, and I could hear it. You we're all still on the path. You're on the path. You're figuring out. You're still working. Um, what would you like to share with folks that may be in a similar place that you were that are just really struggling, that feel like they've kind of exhausted a good amount of options? I always tell folks, do everything that you can. I believe in titration. See people, talk to,
Yeah.
do it all. Like plant medicines, usually I would say would be your last line of defense, right? But what would be your advice for folks that are struggling, that are just trying some different things right now?
Yeah, I mean, a low hanging fruit in that department is to, experiment with breathing. Breathing helps so much. It can really understand, go down the vagus nerve rabbit hole on YouTube and try to understand how to, you know, affect your nervous system. Um, that that can be tremendous for you, just in the, just minor things like that is a great place to sort of get started. And I've been asked so many times, like for, advice for folks, and it's such a nerve-wracking proposition. And because I feel I was very willing, uh and I'm trying to find something meaningful for people who might be struggling right now, because there's really so many things in people's way, like money, like opportunity, like circumstance. There's so many things that my advice is going to fall on dead ears, because, well, yeah, it must be nice. And so I'm trying to think of things that everyone who, no matter where they might be in life right now, how stuck they might be.
I think that's great. I think then we'll throw some things out there as a team. I think in complete agreement, community and communication with this community, the
Yes.
people around you. Sometimes we assume that they know. They don't. I could assure you, they're not mind readers. And sometimes the way that we communicate, well, I should say I communicated in the past was very passive aggressive or in code, and then I'd be frustrated that people weren't interpreting the code like somehow, they were supposed to be able to interpret it. The people around us don't know where we're at sometimes, and I think the people around you would move mountains for you, even if you don't think it, if you're in a really heavy place and you're really struggling, if you're able to communicate it. So again, that may not be for everybody, but that's a piece that may work for someone. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, talk. I thank God, I have a brother, you know, not everybody has a brother. Not everybody has a relationship with their brother. Not everybody has someone they can confide in, but that he's a relief valve. And say something out loud to folks when it gets too dark, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you nailed some good pieces prior to that, or even after. Again, if it is, again, we're discussing in this, obviously, your plant medicine your ceremony. So even pre or post, I think the breath work's important. A good friend of mine, Haley Nichols, breath work coach, she always mentions like breath work is microdosing these medicines. So a degree, it's how you keep centered, how you can affect your nervous system and be present. I
Yeah.
think one of the biggest issues that we have in society is this lack of presence. Most people are either living in the past or the future, which what's tied to both of those are some sort of emotional component. You're thinking about something in the past that's creating emotion, or in the future that's creating emotion. So you're constantly in some sort of emotional state. It's exhausting. So being able to just be and be present and be still is to me one of the greatest gifts. And it's something
Mhm.
that everybody has access to, regardless of where
And
you're at. You can
and
be
a game
present while you're
changer.
eating a meal. Yeah.
Yeah. A game changer for me was learning, like, it's nice to be able to have a setting and actually meditate and spend some time, but the power of just a good cleansing breath at a red light, because like when you're ruminating
Yes.
over some negative things, like just getting in the practice of doing that to help keep you from just ruminating into infinity.
Yes.
Break, take a break, you
Yeah.
know?
And there's some great resources out there, guys. Not to put you towards our resources, but if you're on this podcast, some of the resources, one that I put out there a lot is this one I call the 1 minute meditation. And it's essentially for the reason that Josh mentioned. Again, folks don't understand that, as we're reacting to stimulus, except for especially certain things that are going to elevate us or put us in a fight or flight type circumstance that we're going to heavily react to. In the animal kingdom, they will go into what's called homeostasis and essentially vibrate or purge this energy or this extra adrenaline out and then go back to it. We as humans just keep shoving it down. So taking those breaths allow you to switch from this fight or flight into this more regulated system. And it's not difficult. You could do it within just a couple breaths, less than a minute, maybe a minute. But that alone, again, as you said, because all this thought, all this energy, all this reliving or thinking about ruminating is having an energetic and physical negative impact on our bodies. Dis-ease is a thing.
Right.
So yeah, that's another great tool.
And
But yeah.
it's usually so much in the way of ease is an understanding, some knowledge that's missing, and I think there's a lot more to come, but there's already a lot out there for people who are struggling and feel like they've been to therapy. They've been on, I've been on and off of antidepressants since my grandmother died in 2001. If you feel like everything has, and there's no options left, please just Google, just look up psychedelics, look it up. Look, there's tons of YouTube videos, and just use use pragmatism. I I vouch for this source. I would recommend this resource. But do your homework and take your time, but don't put it off at a table, just because it doesn't fit with you know what the beliefs you grew up with. Is tricky because yeah, it's been a beautiful experience. And as much as you don't want to proselytize, or whatever the word is, as much as you don't want to be an evangelical like psychedelic person, um I do I do think it could help a lot of people. And you look around the world, and the different psychoses that you see causing all of the behaviors in the world that we live in, and it's just missing something so simple. um and it feels like this is a part of it that's missing, and I feel like science is moving in a direction to try and get it mainstream, and which brings a whole nother set of things to be worried about, right? But it's so beautiful. And for me, and for almost everyone that I know that's participated, it has really been an awakening experience, because in two different ways you realize what it's really like. That's one awakening, like, oh, it's not that, it's this. And then the other awakening is you've been thinking about life one way all this while, and there's just a multitude of different ways to approach all of these opinions and stances that you have. Um I don't know, there's a chance to really dissolve away everything that isn't love in that. And I don't know, that's a powerful thing.
Yeah, I love it. And the word that you said, it's like it is compassion, the experience that you had, and then what are we missing? I think that was the puzzle piece. It was what you felt you were missing. It's what I felt I was missing. And compassion is a word it's more in depth than you can sit with that for a while, because it's not just it's compassion for everything, for yourself, for the situation you're in immediately, for the present circumstance, good or bad, for the people around you.
Yeah.
We could use a little bit more of it. And I guess I want to just tackle on the piece that you said, because it is such a big piece when we're talking about privilege and opportunity for things, right? So I'm going to recommend anybody listening to this, if it's a financial opportunity that you need, okay, if first off, try everything first. That's always going to be this podcast, this channel. It's all about safety first. So safety to means exactly what Josh said, doing your research. There's lots of different groups out there. Do your research. Use this channel to get some basic questions. Are they certified in first aid? What's their experience? Do they have any issues against them? Just do some research. And it's important because I know when I was looking for a plant medicine group, church, whatever it may be, my concern was I was desperate, right? I wasn't really listening to what they said. It was more like, can I come? And the answer, yes, then I'll be there. So I just want to give folks a little bit more opportunity for some discernment, and that's what this site's about, because I know that I got lucky. Some folks don't get lucky. So there's some things that you want to look out for. Again, use this site to do that. But if it's a financial issue that you're working with, don't just not reach out to us, but reach out to the organization that you're considering. If you find a group locally, you find a group that you feel connected to, reach out to them. Almost any church that's, well, I'm going to say any church that you should consider should be offering scholarships, discount, free admittance to people based on income. That to me is a standard for any legitimate church. And maybe people have some issues that I said that. That's fine. We as a church, we offer that. This is a medicine. It's a sacrament. This is not something that should be only for the folks that could afford it. So don't let that be a hesitation. If it's something that through your research, you've exhausted everything, you've tried everything, and you're like, this may be it, talk to the local organization, see if they'll help. But again,
And at the same time, it's worth it. At the same time, it's worth it if you can even eke it out. It's absolutely worth it.
100%. For 100%. So yeah, I think that's important for folks. And again, the safety aspect of it, just do a little research, find out the background, because you want to be able to step into these to work on trauma, to heal trauma, not to be re-traumatized. And so just proceed with caution. There's some other great groups out there like safeceremonies.org. Take a peek at them, but just travel safely. First
And being
off,
plugged
yeah,
in, honestly, and being plugged in through you guys into the network of like on the the group messages and stuff like that. That's part of the integration process. I feel like I have a group of friends who understand this side of the medicine. And it's important because when you leave the space, you go back into the buzzsaw of the world that we live in. And so it's nice to know you're insulated with some compassionate humans.
yeah. Well, what would you want to share with folks in closing? Anything that you want to share?
Just you may need to lose weight, you may need to get in shape, I don't know, you may need to do a lot of things. You may need to read more, whatever the case is. Those might all be true. Um, and before you address them, I think the biggest priority in your life is to learn to love yourself and accept yourself. And the sooner you can do that, I think the sooner you can get on with all of the rest of it. Fight like hell to get there. And I think the rest will take care of itself,
I think that's perfectly stated. I just want to give a shout out. The painting behind you is by a good friend of ours, Haley Dixon, or the art behind us. I love that it's been in here the whole time.
Collage, yeah.
Yeah, and just a shout out.
Connections everywhere. Yes, I love it. Right.
It's awesome, and a shout out to BJ, your partner. Just love her. She's her own medicine person. She's making her own impact, and it's amazing to watch. And just, I mean, I'm not just saying because on this, but it's been an honor just to meet you and just be a part of watching this happen for you.
And to watch her light up, doing these types of things is beautiful to me. It's just like a new chapter.
Yeah, I love you, man. I really do appreciate you coming on, and that's probably one of the best podcasts I've had. So I appreciate you taking the time and sharing your story with everyone.
You too, brother. Thanks for having me. Thanks for taking the time. Thanks for making the trip. Thanks for being my friend.
I love you, man. Thank you.